What has unfolded in London over the last 48 hours is not just a political crisis. It is a silent collapse spreading into every corner of Great Britain. And those who watch until the end will understand why experts are already calling this the start of the worst political winter since World War II. The truth is simple, brutal, and impossible to ignore. The Starmer government is not just cracking, it is imploding from within. Westminster sources describe corridors in panic, ministers avoiding each other's calls, and advisers tearing up speeches that were meant for a country still under control. And as this explodes at the heart of power, a chilling question hangs in the air. Who is actually governing the UK right now? Brace yourself, because what you will understand today is not about politics. It is about survival amid a government that has completely lost its way. And if you think this is an exaggeration, know that number 10 is so divided that not even veterans of past crises can explain what is happening. In the early hours, as London slept, an internal warning was sent out in emergency. Structural risk of failure in the chain of command. Yes, you heard that right. The same alert used when a prime minister is about to fall. The chaos was so deep that two conflicting orders were signed at the same time by the government, something never seen in the country's recent history. And to make matters worse, those who should be supporting the prime minister are no longer by his side. Health Secretary Wes Streeting now appears as a potential traitor, quietly preparing the ground to take over. But what turned allies into enemies? Why did this internal coup begin? Who really pulled the trigger that set off this avalanche? The answer is even more dangerous than it seems. And we will get there. The public over 45 recognizes something the media analysts try to hide. The signs of collapse are identical to the moments before Boris Johnson's fall. MPs exchanging coded messages, last-minute cancelled meetings, ministers disappearing for hours without explanation, and, most seriously, an internal power struggle that has spilled onto the streets. In less than 24 hours, 17 local councils warned they cannot balance their winter budgets, and the word cuts appeared in documents meant to guarantee heating for the elderly and support for vulnerable families. That alone would be worrying, but there is something darker happening. Labour leaders received an enigmatic signal from Streeting's camp. Stand by, await activation. No explanation, no context, just an order. This is not politics. This is internal war, a struggle for command, and the kind of move that weakens the UK at the very moment it needs stability most. And while the government fights itself, Nigel Farage emerges as the only one reading the situation clearly. For a more experienced audience, who have seen political betrayals before, his words echoed as a historic warning. When a government bleeds, the markets smell it first. And that is exactly what is happening now. The Bank of England received direct alerts from financial institutions warning that instability is eroding international confidence. The consequence? Possible interest rate hikes, pension risks, winter fund threats, and panic that could bring the country to a standstill. All because, while Starmer tries to appear firm in front of the cameras, his own allies are scrambling to decide who will catch him when he falls. And this detail is crucial. It is not the opposition bringing Starmer down, it is the Labour Party itself sawing the ground beneath his feet. And here is the point your audience needs to understand with absolute clarity. The chaos is no longer confined to Westminster. It has reached the doorsteps of ordinary people. In just a few hours, 12 Red Wall MPs sent internal alerts saying they can no longer defend the Starmer government to their voters. This never happens without reason. When the base starts to flee, it means collapse is on the way. And the warnings did not stop there. An influential Labour member admitted, anonymously, that they are ready to table a motion of no confidence against their own leader. These moves only happen when the house is already burning from within. And as this unfolds, essential services go into meltdown. LBC phone lines were jammed for nearly an hour. NHS leaders warn the system will not survive the winter at this rate, and police and local councils demand immediate guidance. Guidance that simply never came. The feeling for the average citizen? The government has vanished just when it was needed most. And as if that were not enough, what leaked from inside Downing Street in the last hours is terrifying. The chain of command has collapsed. At 9:11 a.m., an internal alert, used only when a prime minister is about to resign, was triggered, making it clear that Number 10 and the Treasury issued totally contradictory orders at the same minute. 3 directors general refused to sign off on winter plans. This is not administrative failure. This is total rupture. A document classified as amber revealed decision-making is no longer coherent. There is no clarity over who is in charge. A phrase that should send a shiver down the spine of anyone over 45, because we have all seen where crises like this can lead. Economic chaos, social instability, loss of confidence, and a brutal winter for those who need help most. Meanwhile, Streeting responds with surgical coldness. A government only falls when its foundation is already rotten. That is not criticism. It is a declaration of war. And the impact of this internal collapse is now directly reflecting on the economy. And for those who have lived through past crises, the signs are impossible to ignore. At 10:23 a.m., the Bank of England received 3 consecutive alerts from major financial institutions warning that confidence in UK markets is melting away because of the political instability created by the government itself. The numbers are shocking. Internal projections talk of a 0.7% to 2% increase in borrowing costs if the chaos continues, which would be devastating for pensions, mortgages, and energy bills this winter. Energy suppliers have already warned that, if nothing is stabilized, the impact could be an immediate 6% to 9% increase, just as millions of families rely on subsidies to heat their homes. And while the UK faces this frightening scenario, Starmer insists he has everything under control. But how can someone who cannot even control his own cabinet control a national crisis? That is the question now echoing in the streets, in the unions, in the councils, and even among the government's own allies. And it is in this leadership vacuum that Wes Streeting makes his boldest and most dangerous move yet. At 11:06 a.m., he gathered vulnerable MPs, especially those with fragile constituencies, and delivered a message cold as steel. If stability does not come from the top, it will come from elsewhere. Internally, access to the system known as West 4 Leader Hub surged by an astonishing 480%, and even neutral MPs began requesting economic documents from Streeting, clearly preparing for a possible change in leadership. Number 10 responded by calling this a silent coup. But the truth, repeated by Streeting's own group, is even more humiliating for Starmer. The vacuum is not created, it is exposed. And to make matters worse, Nigel Farage amplified the impact, saying that if Labour continues to destroy itself from within, the next election will be open season. In other words, power is no longer centered on Starmer. Power is circulating, looking for someone capable of stopping the country from sinking into its worst political winter in decades. And before we continue, I need to speak directly to you watching this chaos unfold live. If you want to stay informed without relying on traditional media, which covers up and hides what really matters, then take a moment now and subscribe to the channel. Leave a like too, because it shows YouTube that you want the truth the mainstream media does not dare to show. It only takes a second, but it makes all the difference in ensuring more Britons know what is really happening in the country. And while the Labour Party implodes from within, Nigel Farage advances like someone who smells historic opportunity. At 12:22 p.m., Reform UK released a surgical message targeted at older voters, those who have sustained the country for decades and now watch the government lose control. The message said they paid taxes all their lives, and now chaos puts everything at risk. The effect was immediate. In less than an hour, Farage's support among the over 55s rose by more than 2%, a brutal climb in such a short time. He branded Labour a national vulnerability and warned that when a government collapses, the whole country is exposed. Streeting and his allies accused Farage of spreading fear, but his response was harsher and more realistic. "The fear arrived before me." For those with more experience, that phrase is not rhetoric. It is a warning. The UK is entering a point where the risk is no longer political, but structural. And it was in the late afternoon that the situation finally shattered any illusion that the problem was contained. 7 major local councils announced they cannot guarantee essential winter assistance if energy prices keep rising. Suppliers say current volatility recalls the worst moments of 2008, when global markets turned upside down. International investors began quietly moving some of their funds, and even a sovereign wealth fund reduced its UK exposure by 0.4%, which may seem small but symbolically is huge. It is the kind of gesture that signals loss of confidence. Starmer and Streeting tried to put out the fire, but both failed. Neither could offer a clear plan, a sign of stability, or even a unified message. And at that moment, a phrase written by a Treasury analyst at 1558 set the tone for what is to come. If destabilization continues, multiple failures could occur simultaneously. This is no longer a political crisis. It is a national fracture. And tell me one thing in the comments. Where are you watching this video today? Is it London, Manchester, Birmingham? Or are you following from a smaller town in the countryside? I always read the comments and want to know how far our community is spread, especially at a critical time like this, when the whole country needs to be alert. And now, as night falls over the UK, comes the most dangerous moment in this entire narrative: the silence before the collapse. Experts who have followed historic crises say this calm is not normal. It is the kind of pause that precedes systemic failure. Inside the government, no one agrees with anyone. Starmer's advisors blame ministers, ministers blame Number 10, and the Treasury acts as if it is operating in a completely different country. Most alarming? Ordinary people, especially the elderly, are beginning to feel the impact of instability in their daily lives. Rising energy bills, public services seizing up, appointments being delayed. A country that has faced tough winters now faces something much worse: a winter with no functioning government. Meanwhile, Farage watches every mistake, every hesitation, every retreat, and grows precisely where Labour is crumbling. For the first time in many years, the UK seems to be heading not towards a political dispute, but towards a complete redefinition of who truly bears the responsibility for protecting the nation. And within this scenario of absolute uncertainty, one truth becomes impossible to deny. Power is no longer with Starmer. It is adrift. Streeting moves in the shadows, consolidating support, testing limits, and waiting for the exact moment to act. Farage grows among the more experienced, who have seen other governments crumble and recognize the smell of instability. And the whole country enters a kind of involuntary vigil, awaiting the next move, because everyone knows it is coming. The UK stands still, as if holding its breath before a historic turning point. And you, watching now, realize something many do not dare to admit. It is no longer a question of if something will happen. It is a question of when, and that when is getting closer. And as each piece of this board collapses, one question becomes impossible to ignore for those who have seen the UK face serious challenges in the past. Who will take charge when the system finally breaks? Because by now, it is clear there is no functional leadership. Number 10 is not in control. The Treasury works in opposite directions, and the Labour Party has become a battleground where each faction fights for survival. Meanwhile, the structures that really matter, hospitals, councils, emergency services, operate at the limit, begging for stability that simply does not exist. It is as if the country is walking towards a historic threshold, that rare moment when a nation must choose between continuing to fall or fighting back with strength. And in this critical gap, Farage advances, Streeting maneuvers, and Starmer just tries to stop everything from collapsing altogether. For the citizen watching all this, the feeling is clear. We are not facing an ordinary crisis. We are facing a rupture that will redefine the UK. And as the night deepens and Westminster tries to hide its own paralysis, one conclusion imposes itself with the weight of a truth no one can any longer deny. The country has officially entered the danger zone. Confidence is melting, the economy is wobbling, and millions of Britons, especially the elderly, who have worked their whole lives, now find themselves at the center of a political earthquake they did not ask for. Starmer insists he can stabilize the government, but every move he makes proves the opposite. Streeting waits in the shadows, like someone who already understands the throne is empty. And Farage, watching from the outside, prepares as the only figure saying what many already feel deep down, that the UK needs strength, clarity, and a break from this era of fragility. The coming days will not just be decisive for the government, they will be decisive for the future of the nation. And as everything unfolds, one certainty remains. The UK cannot survive another winter in the hands of a government that has already lost control of its own destiny.